2022. I am Melissa Pache, CEO of the Whistler Chamber of Commerce, and I'd first like to acknowledge that we are having this virtual meeting on the shared, unceded, beautiful territories of the Squamish and Lillooet nations, and we honor their language, their culture, land, and traditions. I would like to start by thanking all of our members for your continued support the Chamber receives through your annual memberships and commitments enabling us to do the important work that we do, including webinars like this. This session is being recorded and will be available online at the end of this, by the end of this week, to share with your colleagues or review it as you see fit. To ask questions today, please use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Keep your questions short and sweet. Also, if you're on the call today and you'd like to use this as a networking opportunity, feel free to add your contact information, email, and website in the chat function. So without further ado, with the critical labor shortage we are all facing, many of you have been forced to become resourceful with both your current staffing and making some significant changes to your operations. Today, Aaron Kopelow joins us. He is the Director of GrantFinders to learn about what funding is available for small to medium-sized businesses looking to hire students. Aaron is the founder and director of GrantFinders based in Vancouver. Aaron is an expert in employment grants and has worked with companies across a wide variety of industries and company sizes to secure over $1 million in funding over the past 2.5 years. Aaron was inspired to start GrantFinders after working for a large consulting company and realizing that there wasn't enough grant support out there for small businesses. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us today. And I'm going to pass it off to you to let us know what's happening with GrantFinders. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa, for that intro. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody for spending your lunch hour here with us. Yeah, I was going to give a quick intro on myself, how I got into this kind of line of work, how the company got started, and then really go into the nitty gritty on some of the hiring grants that are available. Hopefully give you guys some key information that'll be able to help you actually access these funds. Because everybody knows that there are grants, but when it comes to actually getting the money, there's always a struggle there. It's different for different people. And so hopefully some of this information will help you kind of clear up how to actually get in on the funding. So yeah, to start a bit about myself, I actually graduated from UBC 3 years ago with an engineering degree. And I was working for a civil engineering company in Richmond. And I absolutely did not like it at all. I was doing a lot of technical work. I was on spreadsheets every day. And I worked there for 9 months. And I said, you know what, I really want a job where I'm connecting with people, where I'm socializing, where I'm learning about people's difficulties, and then trying to help them. So I quit my job and I went online and I was looking for other types of work. And one of the big kind of areas of interest was sales. And so I was looking for sales jobs and I saw a company advertising and they called themselves Grant Angels. And I thought, well, that's something I've never heard of and I don't know what that even means. So obviously I had to apply and interview with them and I got the job. I started working for them and I realized, that there actually is quite a lot of funding available for businesses to access. And so that was what this company did, is they helped small to medium-sized businesses access grant funding. And they were doing all sorts of different programs. And I was learning about all these programs and having conversations with, a whole slew of different types of companies. And even though I had pretty much zero sales experience, I was still signing people on as clients just because the demand was so high for help with these grants. And so right as I start to kind of get comfortable and get good at this job, of course, the pandemic hits. So I'm now working from home and I'm using my own computer and my own phone. And I kind of start to realize, like, wait a minute, these grants aren't proprietary. There's nothing really here that I couldn't do myself. So eventually I made the decision that I was going to branch out, start my own company that did the same thing, and really focus on a few programs that I thought were the best ones. And so, yeah, I quit and I didn't tell them right away that I was starting a new business. I waited a couple weeks, set up my website with my roommate at the time, who's now my business partner. And And then I sent them an email and I learned about non-compete agreements, and I had to hire an employment lawyer. And ultimately, the final result was that the non-compete agreement that they had with me was for 2 years, which is actually too long. You can't have a non-compete agreement for 2 years because it's not something that will be upheld. And so I got it, I was able to start fresh. They said to me, good luck. Don't talk to any of our clients. You can start from zero. So that's what I did. And I started out, making cold calls and cold emails. I think in the first few weeks I called, a couple hundred different businesses, and I had one sale. And I realized like, oh, this is not going to happen if I have to go this slowly. And so luckily I had a call with somebody who turned me on to this software that uses LinkedIn automation. And so some of you have probably got all these, messages in your inbox on LinkedIn. Hey, can I talk to you? That kind of sort of sales thing through LinkedIn. But luckily for my industry, everybody's interested in grants. They want to hear, if they're missing out on anything. And so I was able to book some calls and meetings through LinkedIn, and that's where I got my start. And then about almost a year and a half later, now we've got 80 different companies signed up as clients. We've done, over 500,000 in grant funding since, I started my business. And yeah, my Darian, who was my roommate at the time, who helped me set up the website for free, is now my full-time partner in the business. So that's where we are today. And now I was gonna get into some nitty-gritty on the grant details. So I think we had some slides prepared. If we could get those up, that would be helpful for this part of the presentation. There we go. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so that's, I think we'll start on the second slide. This is the name of the company, GrantFinders. But here's the real information you want to know, and that's about the Student Work Placement Program. So SWPP, if you Google that, it'll pop up with a bunch of information about these grants. However, in my opinion, it's not that clear on the government website how these programs work. So I'll try and clear that up for you. And basically, there's two different streams of funding. So there's a 50% wage subsidy and a 70% wage subsidy. The higher amount is for hiring from underrepresented groups. So what does that mean? That's somebody who, it actually means a lot of different things. It could be a first-year student. It could be someone who's a visible minority. It could be somebody with a disability. Anything you can think of that might be underrepresented, it probably is. It's any category basically outside of kind of the norm. So LGBT groups, that's another one. Yeah, the list goes on and on. But basically, if you hire somebody who is a student, so currently enrolled in a post-secondary program, and they're also Canadian, so they need to be either a citizen or a permanent resident of Canada, then you can qualify for one of these subsidies. So it really is that simple. It's not really about the revenue of the business or when the business started or any of that, because I know with a lot of grant programs, they want to know more about kind of the company itself. But this program is really about, are you hiring Canadian students? And that's why I like it, because it's designed to help students get work. And that's actually what it does. It doesn't discriminate against different types of companies. So that is the basics of what is available. It's available year round. So it's been approved until 2024 at this point. It's already been available for the past 5 years. So I'm hoping that it's going to continue on into the future past 2024, but it's been written into the budget until then. And whether it continues or not depends on who's in government. So yeah, and I think next slide would be good. All right, there we go. So eligibility, this is the thing that everybody is kind of worried about, because often with grants, you find something that rules you out. But with this program, it really is about hiring Canadian students. So if they're a citizen or a permanent resident and they're currently enrolled in school, that is exactly what you're looking for. Unfortunately, if they are on a student visa, if they're an international student, that will not qualify. So And that's with almost any type of grant, hiring grant, training grant. There's lots of different types of grants. This is just one example. But something to keep in mind is that if they're not Canadian, they're very likely not going to be eligible. So yeah, and then they do also need to be hired as an employee. So what the government's looking for there is they want to see that CPP and EI are being paid. They don't want contractors, also because contractors is a little bit less stable form of employment. So they're really trying to motivate people to have them on as employees. And then, yeah, currently enrolled in post-secondary. What that means is it can be a technical institute, it can be an undergrad, a master's, a PhD. It really doesn't matter. It just has to be some sort of post-secondary school that they're currently registered in. So they have to be able to prove that they've enrolled for something there. And then ideally a tech-oriented position. There's way more funding for positions that teach young people tech skills. It really doesn't need to be that complicated. It can be as simple as Excel or some other type of software that, they just need to, it doesn't have to be like programming or coding is what I'm saying. It just has to be, something that they're doing on a computer or a phone or, learning about that's related to tech. So yeah, okay, I think that's it for this slide. Okay, great. Yeah, so here's an example of how it would actually work. So this is an example that I took from one of our clients, but I just made it under our company name. So if we hired a Canadian student for digital marketing position who's currently enrolled in a business undergrad at UBC. So they're Canadian, so they're a citizen of Canada, they're going to be eligible. They're also currently enrolled in an undergrad at UBC. So all of that means that they are going to be eligible for this funding. And then student works 15 hours per week and is paid $17 an hour. That's important because this is a percentage wage subsidy. So like I mentioned, there was those two different streams of funding, the 50% and the 70%. So because, did I put this here? I don't know if I clarified, but if this student was a woman, for instance, then because it's a woman working in a STEM position, and STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, digital marketing qualifies under that. So then they would be in a higher percentage wage subsidy. So then if the student's paid $4,000 whatever over 4 months, then you have a 70% wage subsidy of $3,034, and then you're only paying about $1,300 for 255 hours of work. So that's an example of how this program can actually, really be beneficial. And it's also an example of how you can use it part-time. So this is 15 hours per week. It can be up to 40 hours. It's flexible. It doesn't matter. But a lot of businesses, they don't have the budget for somebody full-time. The other really cool thing about this program is that you can get repeat grants for the same student. So this is over 4 months. So you would apply, every time you apply for a 4-month grant. But if this student, if they're doing a really great job for your business and you want them to continue, you can go ahead and apply for another grant for the same person. So people don't know that. They don't put that anywhere online for some reason. But we've done tons of them and they're eligible. They're going through, they're getting reimbursed. So yeah, if you have a student that's, maybe they're doing school part-time and they're working part-time, we've had people that we've done 4 grants in a row, like, 16 months worth of grant funding for the same student. So that's a way that, it doesn't work for every business, but it is something, it's a way that you can use this funding strategically. I think, is there another slide there? I think it might just be the contact info. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so if you do have any other questions, I know that every business is unique. You might have, something I didn't cover. We also do have a bunch of time for Q&A. So, but yeah, my email is aaron@grantfinders.ca. If you do have questions on anything I just talked about and they're not covered in the Q&A, then definitely follow up with me. We're also on LinkedIn, posting all sorts of different grants, not just the student ones. And then there's the website there as well. So that was everything I had kind of scheduled. And I'm sure there's
going to be lots of questions. And if they don't have them, I do. So came prepared for you.
Perfect.
So again, for those of you that have joined us just after 11, the chat box is there for you to network and add in your contact details and who you are, where you're from, your website. And then the Q&A is there for anyone who'd like to ask some questions. So first of all, thanks, Aaron. That was very informative, lots of information. And as we talked about before we opened up the webinar, our community, like those across the globe, really, with this critical labor challenge, which is not new to Whistler, but it's been increased significantly during COVID. We typically have a large hiring season for the summer and then one for the winter. And as I mentioned, right now, most businesses are just hiring consistently through the year with an influx to set up for summer and winter. So this comes at a good time for the summer hiring. I guess one of the first questions I would have is how quickly can you turn around a grant? So if we applied through you and went through what's based on obviously criteria and the forms being filled out, but what's typically your turnaround time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in order to apply for a grant, the basic information you need is you have to have the student. So they have to be, you have to have found a Canadian student. Once you've done that, it's really not that complicated. You have to have the offer letter of the job. So the hours per week, the wage, all of that stuff will be included in the offer letter, and then the student's resume. So those two pieces of information, depending on the company, if you have hired a bunch of students in the past, we would need to know a bit of the history of that as well. But if you haven't, then that's really all we need is just the offer letter and the resume of the student.
Okay.
And that's enough to create an application and get it approved. And so normally that would take, so at this moment in time, it's a little bit more complicated just because we're close to the deadline of the summer funding, and summer funding is running out a little bit. So normally, if you applied early, that would take 10 days to get an approval from the government from when you submitted the application. And approval means that you have the money set aside for you, but you don't get it right away because you need to pay the student and then prove that you've paid them over 4 months, and then you get the reimbursement. So
okay, so
yeah, does that?
I guess a question would be, I know Kavani has asked a question, do you need to apply before the student starts work, which I think you just answered, but another question that ties into that, is it the responsibility of then the business to find a student at a university or a college that fits the criteria? So they still have to go to the universities and the colleges to hire the student, confirm their employment, get them to work, pay that out, and then be reimbursed at the end of it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I do have partnerships with schools across Canada, like Langara College in Vancouver. And then, some people are interested in hiring remote as well. So there's schools across Canada that invest heavily in their co-op programs because it's an attractive thing as a student if your school is going to help you get a job. So they have people that their full-time job is just to help businesses find students to hire at these universities and colleges, and they will be interested in meeting with you and helping you find students from their school to hire. And like I said, we can help facilitate that as well if you do find that you're not able to contact.
Because I saw that on your website that you do more than just the grants. You actually help with job descriptions, interviews, offer letters, those types of things as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the universities that we partner with, they have co-op coordinators that will help with that. I'm happy to look at that as well and help you. So yeah, you would need to ultimately choose the student on your own. That would be your decision, and that's just because if I'm not in the business every day, I really wouldn't know who the best culture fit for your business would be. That's just me being honest. I could choose some random student, but that really wouldn't be helpful. It's best if the business chooses the student themselves. But if you need help with those smaller things like the job description, making sure it's eligible within the grant, and just kind of help finding a pile or a pool, of students that you can choose from. That's all stuff that we can definitely help you with.
Right. Something else Kavani has asked is they've already applied for this government summer job program, have not heard back. Should I still reach out to you? One's different than the other, right?
Yeah, the government. So I'm assuming that's the Canada Summer Jobs program.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that program is they don't have to be students for that program.
That's right.
And that's what I like about that program, but that's about all I like about that program because it's less money, and it's harder to access. And like you mentioned, it's slow. You're not going to hear back very quickly, that's because the applications are very admin heavy. And so yeah, it really, like, if you don't want to be restricted to hiring students, then Canada Summer Job is a great
Is the way to go.
option because you don't have to hire students. But if it is something where you go, oh, I don't really mind, I'm happy to hire people that are currently in school and they're taking the summer off to look for work, then I would say, the student hiring grant is a better option for you. So it does depend on what you're looking for.
And what's the deadline for the intake right now for grants?
Yeah, so there's 3 periods of grants over the year. So summer is May 1st to August 31st. So the deadline is May 1st. It's really, the deadline is it's before you start the internship. And so if you're starting a couple weeks into May, we could technically make that happen. However, the summer is very competitive. And so I'm seeing signs that the funding is running quite low at this point. So, I would say for the summer, it may be a little bit late. We could definitely, I think it's always still worth a conversation to try and figure out, strategy.
Well, this isn't going, the labor shortage isn't going away.
Yeah.
Summer. So this is going to be like we talked about earlier, this is going to be a continued conversation to have. And it's certainly something that the Chamber never thought we would be in a position to be sort of that recruitment center. And we're definitely building up a plan for that so that the businesses feel more supported, even more supported than already. It's just something that's really changed the dynamics of what we do. So having folks like yourselves come in and share that knowledge and come back again will be really helpful. Jill is with Murphy Construction and has asked a question: would this type of grant apply for apprenticeship programs? We have several employees that are going through their Red Seal carpentry levels, so they complete terms of the on the job work for our company, and then we lay them off, so they go through their schooling for 3 months at a time, and then they are rehired. So is that something that is something they can apply for through you as well?
Yeah, that would be eligible, so long as they are learning some type of technology within when they're doing their work experience, which I'm assuming if they're doing trades, they would be. And then what I was going to mention is that, so the funding lines up with kind of the standard academic terms. So there's May to August funding, there's September to December funding, and then there's January to April. And those are in line with kind of like your classic like UBC semesters. Yeah. And so that is the one tricky part. I don't know if the trade schools line up exactly with those dates as well. But that's like, if you wanted coverage from, July to October, that wouldn't work because it's kind of in the middle of 2 of those periods. So that is one thing to consider. But if it lines up with, either May to August or September to December, they're learning some sort of technology in the job that they're doing, and they're Canadian, then if they're enrolled in, it doesn't matter if it's trade school or any type of school at all, they would be eligible.
Can they apply if that person, that student, is over 2 of those periods? Can they apply twice for each period?
And the shorter answer is no, because they need to have they need to be doing at least 3 months of work within one of those periods. So like June to August, the end of August would work. September to the end of November would work. But if it's really right in the middle, it does become awkward, and it won't work within their constraints of this program.
Anna's with Whistler Ideal Accommodations, and her question is more: do students contact you at all to be paired up with a business, or are you just working directly with businesses and the schools to pair them, or maybe even not even pair them? But
No,
Is
I
that right?
haven't. It is something that we've kind of thought about internally, like reaching out to students, and then having students kind of tell businesses, hey, if you hire me, you could get a grant for that. It's not something that yeah, mostly we just do B2B business conversations. That's how we've done it so far. So no, I mean, we do talk to a lot of students just because in order to get the applications completed, the students do have to provide proof of enrollment. And sometimes they're confused about what that is or how to do that. So we coordinate with the students and make sure they can fill out the application, but that's usually after we've talked to the business
Sure.
that's hiring them.
That makes sense. Is there a limit to the number of students that a business can hire or apply for the grant? Or is it limited to just the number, the dollar value per student?
It's 10 students per 4-month term.
Okay, so there is a
So
limit. Okay,
there is a limit, but it's pretty generous.
yeah, that would be.
Never seen somebody hire 10 students for 4
You never
months.
know.
So
Don't say never.
I
These
haven't
days, I'm
seen it.
seeing all sorts of things.
I'm sure somebody's done it, but I haven't seen it.
I'm sure there are. Um, do you work with both? And I think you answered this, but I'll just ask the question again. Do you work with both provincial and national universities, colleges? And you mentioned tech, specifically the tech industry. Do you also then represent a wide range of industries, such as that construction and trades? Because we are a tourism-based resort economy. But being tourism based means that there's construction that builds the infrastructure to support the tourism thing. So I want to be sure that we cover all industries. And is that something that you do?
Yeah, definitely. Tech, I mean, there is quite a lot of funding for tech just from the government in general. And so that was something I just targeted early on when I was starting the business. But now that we're really honed in on student hiring grants, yeah, it doesn't like we have manufacturing companies and construction companies that we work with. There's all different types of businesses are hiring students. And that also reminds me actually of another program that we work on that's a bit smaller. It's a $2,800 grant, but it is very beneficial for trades because it's a youth hiring grant. So it's for if you're hiring somebody that's between the ages of 17 to 29, and they are going to work for at least 3 months, then you can get $2,800 for that person as well. So that's another thing of, there are other, it's not just the student hiring. There's a youth hiring grant. There's Canada Summer Jobs as well. So there are other opportunities out there. If I have a conversation with you and I think, oh wow, this is really a better opportunity for a different type of program, sure. There are other things out there. So I will mention that as well.
And I think one of the things that we're all looking at is cost recovery on our end as well as the business goes. And I'm wondering with hiring you to do this, do you take a percentage of the grant or how does that work for those that are out there? Because obviously there are going to be the larger businesses that have the resources and support to be able to possibly write their own grants and go through the government website. But then where you come in is really for those smaller businesses that just don't have the bandwidth, but would love to take part in this. So what does that look like for a small business?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms like the way we make money is when you make money. So if you receive a grant and you actually get the funds into your company account, we look at how much you've received and we invoice for 20% of that grant amount. So there's no upfront cost. There's no cost unless you actually receive funding. And then it's a percentage-based model. So you're not going to be, paying a large amount for receiving, a tiny grant or something like that. It's something that wouldn't be fair. So it is based on success. It's based on what you're actually receiving. And the grant amount does change, right? Because how I mentioned, like sometimes it's a part-time job, sometimes it's a full-time job, it's a percentage wage subsidy. So it can change, but our pricing reflects that. And what was the other part of that question? I can't remember.
I think you answered it. It was just, is there a cost to the business to work with you and how does it work? But you've answered that question.
Oh, right. And just I was going to say there are larger businesses as well that I've spoken to, and I'm always a little bit surprised by how they're getting grants, but they're not really maximizing it. Because usually it's people that this isn't their full-time job. They've kind of been tasked with it, and we're very motivated to get you the most grants that are possibly out there because that's how we make money. So I have had some companies that they ran into trouble. Their HR person, they couldn't find the hiring grant for that summer. And then when I took a look at what they were doing, I was like, wow, there's quite a lot of money on the table here as well that hasn't actually been looked after. So yeah, small or larger, there's generally an opportunity there to kind of.
I can tell you from filling out grant applications, I would hire you in a heartbeat. I'd rather not do that part of the job.
Yeah.
It can be tedious, especially when it's coming from the government, but we're working on our side, on the advocacy side, to work with the government to make it less tedious. So hopefully we'll get there at some point. But I guess, are there any questions out there in webinar land? My group is being very quiet today. Usually they're quite chatty, but I think sometimes when you can't see them, they probably working on the side, sipping their coffees. But I'll give that a moment. Was there anything else, Aaron, that you wanted to share with us before we close out today's session?
No, I don't think so. I was like, I agree with you. I think, I often say to people, like, my job shouldn't really exist. It would be ideal if the government programs were just easy enough that you could access them without having to spend money on it. But from what I've found so far, it's just not something that the government has really prioritized. And so, yeah, I would recommend, having at least a conversation and seeing, if there's something that you can find that might work for you. And like I mentioned, there's grants for students, there's grants for youth, and there is more money than you would think available for hiring, so long as you are meeting the criteria that the government's looking for. So yeah, I think that was everything.
That's great. No, really appreciate you coming all the way from Vancouver to land in Whistler. But just so you know, we ended up with snow again last night. I woke up this morning and once again, it's still winter. It's getting a bit better now, but I think for me, I'd like spring to arrive finally. But anyways, I really appreciate you being here today. And just before we say goodbye fully and close out the webinar, I wanted to also not just thank you, Aaron, for sharing your knowledge and resources with our business community, but obviously thank you so much for our members for joining us this morning. A couple of things coming up from the Chamber's perspective that our members may like to join us. And Aaron, feel free to reach out if you'd like to join as well. The Whistler Excellence Awards nominations are now open through June 12th. You can nominate yourself or nominate a business or a business person who you feel has gone above and beyond this year, which quite truly is probably all of us. The next Chamber Apres is next week already. I feel like we just had one, but we have another one coming up on May 4th at the Barefoot Bistro. This is our signature networking event every month, and the capacity is quite limited this time around. Is about 50, and I think we're close to 40. So to avoid missing out, make sure you register today. And then on May 18th, we will be hosting our annual golf tournament at the Fairmont Chateau Whistler Golf Club. Teams are currently sold out, but if you still wish to play, you can purchase a whole package, which is you get to bring your team, you get to network, and it also includes a team of 4. So that's your best option. And lastly, we have made an onboarding for you this year easier and more accessible for you and your teams. We have a fantastic lineup of online on-demand courses available to add to your onboarding packages. The ABCs of Service Excellence. This was designed, created, and delivered by locals for locals, is a fantastic program to welcome newcomers to Whistler and a refresher for longtime locals. So to register or any information about any of these events, visit whistlerchamber.com. So we will continue to stay connected with all of you through our member e-news, and this webinar will be available by the end of the week on our YouTube channel. And Chanel, who's on the back end right now, will be sending out an email with some tools and resources from Aaron. So I appreciate everybody being here today. And there are, hang on. Thank you for, very informative. Ashley's saying thank you. Don't know if you saw that there. So thank you all for being here today. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.